All right, and we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Before we even start this video, if you would like, this Sunday I'm going to be reacting to the new documentary from Netflix that is going to talk about the twins study. I've already made quite a lot of research on the study itself, but I haven't seen the documentary, and I would love to see it to see a little bit more what are they trying to push. But without further ado, today's video, excuse me, today's video is about this gentleman, this lady, I'm not sure, that left a very interesting comment in my video saying that vegan are idiots, reacting to vegan propaganda. And they said they posed a couple of questions that I was going to answer in a comment, but I thought about making a video. It's just easier for everyone, and I think this person was so respectful that they deserve a little bit more effort than just a comment, I think. First of all, Happy New Year to you as well. Um, it's always a pleasure to have a nice civil discussion without any weird emotional baggage. So let's just jump right into it. The first comment or part of the question, he says, it's possible to get 130 grams to 190 grams of oil from soybeans. I believe he is saying this regarding 1 kilogram. So 1 kilogram of whole soybeans will get you about 18% of oil, between 15 and 20, and the rest goes to soybean cake. You get more money from cultivating 1 kilogram of soybeans for soybean cake than for oil, even considering that oil is more expensive. You get circa 20 cents from oil and 40 cents from cake. I'm not sure what the word circa means, but I'm sure someone will tell me. As far as I know, it's possible to either collect soybeans directly or process it in a way that it's still edible to humans. And I'm not sure whether forcing people into soy would be an issue. If the world would go vegan, plant-based, then I think that people would look for alternatives and be interested in eating this type of soy. Um, so first of all, he's right. You can get this amount of oil. Regarding how much you can get from oil and cake, this varies on whether uh, the soybean cake is going to be used for animals or for human food production, depending on the quality, depends on a lot of things, right? Uh, Although I don't see this as a good argument for our discussion. Remember that our discussion is regarding if um, producing this much soybeans directly to humans would be a good thing or a bad thing. I think he's arguing against my point that I said growing uh, soybeans to humans is always more advantageous than growing soybeans to animal production or animal agriculture or energy for the oil. I I Again, this does not dismiss my point, which is farmers don't farm soy or corn to sell it at a lower price for the oil industry or for the animal agricultural industry. First and foremost, you farm to sell for human consumption, which is the one that pays more. It's gonna pay 10 times as more, if not 100 times at some points, than for animal feed, for soybean, and for oil production. However, not all crops are good enough for human production, either because they're ugly or because they're contaminated or because um, they're just they just don't look good on the shelf. Humans will not buy it, so supermarkets won't buy it from the farmers either. And that's what I mean by, okay, what do you do with the leftovers? Can you make profit from it? Yes, I'm sure. Otherwise, I don't think they would be bothered by reselling it. But no one produces soy or corn just for the oil or the animal agriculture. It's primarily for human consumption, and then whatever's left, it goes there. Um, and then he mentions an interesting point. As far as I know, it's possible to either collect soybeans directly or process it in a way that is edible for humans. This is 100% true. If you see the video, vegans are confused about meat that I criticized. He shows examples where this has been done. Excuse me. That yes, you can use the soybean cake to feed humans. Having said that, the question is then twofold: whether one, uh, would you force humans to eat it? And what do you do with the leftovers that humans do not want to eat? Okay. Let's say we live in a vegan world where humans eat the soybean cake. Would all of it be eaten? Probably not. Again, some of it is going to be discarded because it's just not good enough for human consumption. It's either not safe or ugly or whatever. Um, and so some of it would be discarded. And from that moment on, the moment you have some wastage, that wastage can be fed to animals, and then they upcycle that for actually good food, actual foods. Um, I'm not even talking about the health implications. I'm just purely speaking about grams and material wise. Um, excuse me. But and this is in the ideal vegan world where people would happily eat this waste, this soy cake without any regards. Putting that aside, would people want to eat this soy cake, right? I don't think so. I don't think anyone actually wants to eat. You can maybe use a bit of it to and mix it with other foods to bulk up the protein contents of some meals, for example. Um, you could make a very cheap. In my mind, I see like a very cheap bolognese, for people who cannot afford meat every day. Maybe a little bit of that vegan protein would be better than no protein at all, perhaps. You do have to be careful with the anti-nutrients that soy has, many of them. Um, but in the end, you would never be able to use all the soy cake for human consumption. There would always be wastage. There would always be part of it that is not consumed. There is always part of it that goes out of date. And out of such, why not use that for animal agriculture? We are not even close to that point at the moment. So at the moment, before that ideal vegan world comes, which let's hope never comes, what do you do with a soy cake? Um, this will. What do you do with the soy cake that you have right now? Is going to pair up with this third line, and we'll get there again. Let's move on to the second question, which is: I don't think you can give spoiled or moldy grains to animals. It would make them sick. Besides, in the graph, second-grade grains are represented as 3% of non-edibles, according to a paper from which it comes. Maybe these could be considered poor quality grains, and they shouldn't be considered as part of those 13%. Uh, this is speculation, maybe, yeah, sure, maybe, but is this recording? Yeah, but it does not address an important question, which is a lot of the food that we save for humans ends up not being consumed the safe amount of time. It starts to go off date, but although it's off date for humans, it's still happily given to animals without major consequences. Even on cases where some mold starts to spread, it's very acceptable to remove as much of that mold as possible and then feed the rest to animals, while that would not be good enough for humans. Um, excuse me. There's a certain amount of contamination that is acceptable to humans, of course. We've all eaten food that had like a little bit of mold, like cheese, for example. We just remove the mold and we eat the rest. As long as it's not black mold, it's fine. But for animals, this threshold is much higher. So in case of grains, there is a certain amount of contamination that is no longer accepted for humans, and it is acceptable for animals. And we can feed that to the animals without major consequences, because this food will not be fed to them as it is. It will be cooked down into almost a paste, and this feed would not have any negative consequences for animals, but it's not considered safe for humans. It's just what it is. We, if you have any animals, I'm sure that you've given your animals some of your scrapes and some of your leftovers that you don't eat anymore, especially for monogastric animals like pigs and chickens. You'll happily give them leftover anything, basically, and they'll eat it. Um, I'm sure whoever's listening to this has also seen food that you're not so sure, is it safe to eat, is it not safe to eat, maybe it's safe to eat, but you're not going to risk it. So giving that to animals is perfectly fine, you know. Mm. Yeah. So I believe um, this point does not apply. It's not true because, again, bigger threshold for animals than for humans when it comes to contamination. Besides, in the graph second grade, this is not really an argument. I'm not sure what he meant by this. Um, Maybe he can elaborate further when he sees this video. Excuse me. When it comes to residues, can we compost them? If you think of it, a significant portion of animal feed ends up as manure or parts of it, which can be used as one. What would be the difference between plant compost and manure including compost? I think you can provide me some of the literature or net articles if possible. Looking forward to your answer. This one is a very good question. Like, okay, so why do we have to feed the leftovers to animals? Why don't we feed it? Why don't we bury it, create compost, and then use that compost to grow plants? Simply put, because by cultivating the food, we are moving nutrients from one area to the other. We are creating a very big imbalance of nutrients. And if we would just carelessly try to create compost um, in our back gardens without any thoughts of what goes in there and the process that we use for it, it actually may be harmful for the environment. If the nitrates component is too high or too low, if you don't add enough dry material, to make good compost, it's very hard. And the best available compost that you can buy, it's still not as good as animal manure. So on one hand, you can just feed the leftovers to animals and create great compost from beef would be the best, but you cannot feed everything to cows, of course. Well, you could, I guess, if you give them some grains, but beef would be best, sheep would be second, I believe, and then we have chicken and pork, pigs. Um, chicken manure is actually quite good for the environment, although a little bit too acidic. So yes, on one hand, you can create in less than 24 hours, in 12 hours, 18 hours, a beautiful and amazing type of manure that would feed your plants and would feed your animals. On the other hand, to create compost, it's not just a couple of hours. It can take days, weeks, up to 2 years, and this is if you do it correctly. You need to sometimes heat it up, you need to mess around with it, you need to make sure it's being revolved correctly, you need to make sure that there are no pests infiltrating to your manure, creating a very bad and unsafe environment and toxic even. Um, Sometimes you need to cook it as well. They also can pasteurize or cook the manure, but again, it's less necessary. So all these steps that you're adding extra to your compost is just delaying the food manufacturing. You cannot just have plants waiting for this great compost to be created. And the more effort you put into your foods, you're going to drive up the costs. It's going to drive up the energy cost, which in turn will create more pollution. And you really, really don't want that. Can you use them? Can you compost them? Yes. But unfortunately, it's neither efficient, nor ideal, nor cheap. You need a large space to compost. You need to keep attention. You need to check for the nutrient value inside of the compost to make sure it's ideal for your plants. And you need to waste a lot of money and energy to take care of it. In contrast, you can just feed your leftovers to pigs, cows, and chickens, and in 18 hours, you have a perfectly good manure that you can use straight away. That's the big difference. I hope I answered your question. Thank you very much. Feel free to leave any more questions down below. I'll see you in the next one. And again, once again, if you want to join me on this Sunday to watch the documentary together so we can talk about it, I would love to. I will leave links down below for the Twitch. Thank you very much. Have a good one.